I have actually two questions. Two questions that come along quite often, and I don't see much content on. And I scour the Muslim internet and the Muslim responses, but I don't see anybody responding to these questions. And I actually, as a street da'i with Women Islam, actually encountering these questions a lot. I also sometimes wander off to the atheist side of the internet to see what's brewing under them. So what I've noticed is what's not tackled is the notion that we're living in a simulation. This is one of the things that's proposed and propelled by the likes of Joe Rogan, Elon Musk, and George Hotz. Big names, big programmers. These guys get worshipped by almost all the atheists, and they really propel this thought, and it's not really tackled. So if it can be responded to in such a short time, I would like your response. If not, leave it off. Maybe make a video on it with proper research.
A hard problem of solipsism is something that atheists' worst nightmare for them. Right? Why would they? Usually, most atheists are naturalists. If you're now introducing solipsism, which is the idea that your brain in a vat,
you're not really.
How is that helping your naturalistic case? That's in fact, if anything, endangering it, because then you are going into, like in substance theory, kind of like an idealism, if anything, rather than a dualism or a materialism. It's actually against materialism in many ways. Like hard problem of solipsism. So how do you know that that this physical world is not all that there is? That's a stepping stone towards the supernatural. That's one step away from religion, or even if you could argue that is religion, because we believe that it doesn't act as an obstacle at all from the Islamic perspective. If anything, it reinforces that, because the Islamic perspective says that this world is not everything that there is. This reality, this physical reality, is not everything that is. When you die, you're going to be in a reality that is as real as this reality, but it's not this reality. This is called al-hayat al-barzakhiyya, the hayat of the barzakh. Ibn al-Qayyim, he mentions in his book, and he talks about, for example, the hayatul qabr, the life of the grave, and he talks about tawsi' al-qabr, or the idea of enlarging and constricting of the grave, which is a hadith which is very well known. And he says this is not to be understood in this world, in this dunya world. And this Ibn al-Qayyim is obviously a disciple of Ibn Taymiyyah, and he's a hard, if you want to call it that, a literalist, in the sense that he doesn't metaphorize the text and whatever. And this is him saying that when we're talking about constricting the grave and expanding it, this is actually not in the physical grave that we have. This is a dunya this is a reality that is a completely different reality, and you are being subjected to a completely different set of laws. So, for example, when the two angels come and ask you the three questions, and then literally, as the hadith says, you're given a window of either heaven or hell. You'll see your deeds in front of you. It's not happening inside the grave in a physical sense. This is happening in a completely different realm. And this realm is the Hayatul Barzakh, which the soul actually goes to when you're asleep. When you're asleep, your soul goes to the Barzakh. And this is the unconscious. So when you're unconscious in this world, you're conscious in the other world. This is a profound paradigm shift and a reality change. So solipsism and all of those kinds of things, which these atheists, if they want to talk about that, first of all, they have to realize they're shooting themselves in the foot if they're physicalists or materialists, number one. Number two, this, if anything, if you want to go down that route, and it's true, you can't actually solve the hard problem of you cannot refute it. The hard problem of solipsism is irrefutable. It's just like the hard problem of consciousness. It's an irrefutable proposition. But we don't need to refute it as Muslims. We, in fact, believe in it.
But Brother Hijab, is it not a difference? Like if they presuppose this all simulation, like how I thought about it, like from first principle perspective, it's not a natural thought, so it doesn't go under that.
Sorry, bro. If it's if this world is a simulation, like this thing, the Matrix, yeah. Do you know the Matrix? Have you watched that? I watched it when I was like year old or something like that. Yeah, I don't watch films no more. It's a waste of time. But this Matrix thing where you put the thing in the back and then you say what pill you're going to take and whatever, yeah? Now, let me tell you something. If we assume that this is a reality, that the Matrix is a reality, yeah? Do you know that plug they put into the person's head, for example, yeah? And then the person's in a different reality now, which is literally, it's got dimensions, it's got physical properties, or it's got properties of some sort. It's got dimensions, it's got a coherence. It's a coherent place, right? It's not a place of randomness. It's a coherent place. Now then the same exact arguments that we're proposing to the atheists in this world can be applicable in that world. So how can you have a coherent world where there's uniformity of nature and there is regularity? And who is in control of such simulation? Who has put it into place? Who is maintaining that simulation? Who is sustaining that, or what is sustaining that simulation? If an atheist does himself the disservice of actually positing solipsism as some kind of obstacle, then that is him almost putting himself in a grave, ready for you to put the shovel to the mud and bury him fully. The solipsism in no way, shape, or form acts as an obstacle to the religious narratives. It acts only as an obstacle to the materialist, physicalist narratives of the atheists.
Yeah, and a point to add to this is something Faraz Zahabi said on the live stream, and I had him a few days ago. Is if they make the argument we're in a simulation, it's a very subjective thing when you say you're in a simulation.
That's right.
But in order for a subjective thing to exist, there has to be an objective, right?
How?
The concept of in doesn't make sense unless there's an out, right?
Nice.
So even if there is that Catholicism says essentially that the only thing that can be known is the self, right? And we could be a brain in a vat or whatever.
Yeah.
Fine, you're a brain in a vat, but you still exist.
Exactly.
So something's subjective and something's objective. But if Faraz gives the example of dreams, right? So you're in a dream, you think it's real, then you wake up and you're like, oh, that was a dream. But how do you know which one's the dream, which one's real?
Dream, yeah.
But it doesn't make a difference.
Yeah.
Because one's objective, one's subjective, and it's kind of like this, yeah. It's an intellectual ego massage. The way that they use it, oh, we're just in a simulation, and Elon Musk says it, and Elon Musk says, oh, we're going to be in the moon in 5 years, and it's just one of those things you say, but when you actually think about it, it makes no real difference, even if it was true.
That's right.
I agree with you. It's not a natural thought.
Yeah.
This is what I was wondering. Is this even applicable under a first principle rule?
What do you mean?
Like, if they take this as an axioma or a first principle, this is justified.
Okay, but here's the thing, yeah. They are making an assertion. They're not even trying to justify a position. I think that's very important, because this happens often. Somebody comes up to me or Hijab or Hamza or Imran and says, an atheist says this, how do you respond?
Oh, right.
Yeah,
so
before you respond.
I think I get his question now.
Okay.
So the answer to this is very powerful. I just thought about it now, right? I think this is in summation, right?
Yeah.
Not everything that is irrefutable. Sorry, not everything that is refutable. Yeah. Not everything that is irrefutable is true.
True. Yeah.
Not everything that is irrefutable is true. Sometimes you can have irrefutable things.
Like a spaghetti monster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now the spaghetti monster is not a good example, to be honest.
All right.
I refute.
I know what you mean.
No, I can refute the spaghetti monster. But not everything that is irrefutable is true. You can have some things which are irrefutable, but which have no evidence. That's a possibility. It's conceivable to have something which is irrefutable, but which, like an axiom. An axiom is exactly that. Something which is which is no evidence for it, but it's irrefutable.
Yeah. Well,
all right. Thank you.
This is the thing which I think is very important. What's it called when it comes to atheist dialogues? That rather than getting involved in the actual thought experiment, it's sometimes best to simply accept the thought experiment and then say, okay, what's the implications of this? And the implications are nothing.
For us, it's nothing. Yeah.
I mean, if anything,
it's positive.
If anything, what they're basically doing is they're accepting a type of epistemological nihilism. Like they don't really know, or like they can't really know. Like it's a barrier in terms of knowing.
Yes.
They can't know beyond the self. So if anything, like Hijab said, they're just starting off. And the thing which I find funny is that, in Islam, we begin off with our starting paradigm is La ilaha illallah. Our starting paradigm is the Quran and the Sunnah. From that, we build ethics. We expand upon the Islamic ethics. We expand upon those things. And we use that to apply to new realities such as space travel and how do you pray in space and everything. And our system is quite coherent. Now, what they do is they build up humanism, liberalism, feminism. Oh, we're back. Sorry, we had a connection issue.
No problem.
Long story short, you can't build a worldview from that point. So what we're going to do, Brother Korsol, did you have another question? Was that it?
Yeah. Another one I've often encountered on the street is the following one. Sometimes you get delved in their discussions about, you guys know about string theory, right?
You'll know more.
Universe that's coming into existence, popping in and out like bubbles and stuff. So somehow they presuppose that the bigger bubble, being the bigger bubble that contains the little bubbles, always was there and always is there. And I know there's no data on this, and it's it's somewhat of a pseudoscience. But do you guys have any other arguments to counter this instead of that?
So again, it goes back to that point that I said earlier, that if we are to accept string theory properly, and there's 11 dimensions, and and we accept all of all of their epistemology essentially, yeah. All right, so what? Like what are they trying to say?
They're trying to say that the universe didn't need to have like always is and always was. This is what they're trying to say. Like the bigger universe, not this universe, but the bigger bubble.
Yeah.
This is what they're trying to say.
So now all I'll simply do is, because they're basically saying you have this endless creation, and we just happen to be in one, and then you can add the anthropic principle and say we just happen to be the one in that's designed. Fair enough. They've given their perspective. I'm going to turn around and I'm going to say there's 37 universes, and ours is the second most important. It's empirically equivalent, or I can do an n number of alternatives. Like, what's the point? Like, they're not actually making a point. I think this is extremely important to understand. Firstly, they're giving you something which doesn't have any evidence, and they're giving you a thought experiment. What if? So fine. Say, okay, that's fine. Okay, I'm giving you an alternative. What if this?
It's some kind of it's like pseudoscience. They don't have any data on it. I know.
No, they don't. But even the thought experiment, as a thought experiment, you can give something. You can give another. You can give something as arbitrary as that, and then say to them, "Fine, you gave me this. I give you this."
Yeah.
And what? It doesn't. It's neither here nor there.
That's right.
Well, that's a clever one. Yeah, that's a clever one.
It's neither here nor there, and there's an infinite amount. The thing is, what I find funny about these people is that
they're just trying to escape the inescapable.
When it comes to maybe there's a multiverse, maybe with string theory is true and there's 11 dimensions, maybe panspermia, that life came to Earth via aliens which seeded life on Earth. Maybe consciousness is an illusion. With everything, there's a possibility, and the level of skepticism is going down to 0.0001%. When it comes to the idea of there being a creator, skepticism goes to 1,000%, and then it's like, no, that's irrational. How is that possible? Oh, panspermia, yes. String theory, yes. Yeah. So again, fundamentally, and I always try and do this, and especially when talking to atheists, get to the root of the issue, which is, why are you being selectively skeptical? If you're going to be open to wild ideas, then why not be open to the very rational idea of there being a benevolent creator who has created you with a purpose?
But add to one more thing.
Yeah.
One more thing is that for us, like when I've been working on the contingency argument, right? So one of the things that come into it, which I think is very powerful and underused in Western philosophy, even in like medieval those philosophers who specialize in medieval Islam have not brought this to light, especially in like atheist theist discussions, yeah, which is an argument classically known as the tarkib argument, which is basically the argument for composition. And this is a specifically Ibn Sina's argument. This is part of his Burhan Siddiqeen. There's parts of it which are problematic or whatever, but in a nutshell, basically, this is the argument that anything which is composed of parts is dependent. That's the extent of the argument. So if someone believes in a multiverse, they're already saying there's more than one of it. So if they're saying there's more than one of it, then it's going to be dependent. Now, if it's dependent, then you still have the infinite regress problem of dependent things. And that's why what Ibn Sina did, which was different to a lot of the other people, is he took the infinite regress and he said, let's go with it. Let's pretend that there is an infinite regress. And he said that even if there is an infinite regress, what's it depending on? Because the thing is, if there's an infinite regress and it can be rearranged or you can add and subtract from it, he argued argumentum ad absurdum that basically this infinite regress is not actually as you think it is, it's dependent, because it goes back to the composition argument. So it will always be a very strong stabbing thorn in the side of the atheist that whatever theory or oscillating universe or multiverse theory, whatever they want to bring, eternal universes, because don't forget these individuals believed in an eternal universe, by the way, they were eternalists, that whatever you bring, it's not going to disturb.
Yeah.
And it's actually going to bring more problems, because for you, you're going to have to explain why you can have, or how is explicable to have something which is composed of parts and therefore subject to dissembly.
Yeah, so you got a bigger problem.
You got a bigger problem.
You got a bigger problem.
Yeah.
That's very interesting.